British Prime Minister Boris Johnson flies into Kiev later to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Earlier, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said his country wants peace, not war, as tensions continue to mount between Kiev and Moscow. Speaking in Kiev following a meeting with European Commission, the Prime Minister says Ukraine is working to make sure that the nation is properly secured and defended.
Our discussions and negotiations have ascertained the fact that we have similar opinions and standpoints as regards to how we can overcome the security challenges that face not only Ukraine today but the whole transatlantic world. We would like to tell the whole world that we want peace, not war. At the same time, we shall be doing our utmost to ensure that we are properly secured and defended and that the economic stability and sustainability of our country is ascertained. The overarching and very painful sanctions perhaps is the most efficient instrument that could sustain further aggression from Russia. And today with Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, Executive Vice President of the European Commission, we discussed and coordinated our standpoints in regards to this particular issue as well.
I would like to start by repeating the EU's commitment to Ukraine as a priority partner, as well as a free and sovereign country. With the current tense situation at the Ukrainian borders, the EU, alongside with the United States and NATO, calls on Russia to de-escalate immediately. Ukraine is not a threat to European or to Russian security. It is important that the United States, NATO and all European member states continue to cooperate closely, supporting Ukraine in response to Russia's escalation. We are united in sending a clear message to Russia. Any further aggressive action will bring severe political and economical consequences.
And for the latest, let's cross live now to Arise correspondent Philip Crowder, who is in Kiev. Philip, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will speak later today. Their conversation is likely to be rather different to the testy exchange that we saw at the UN Security Council, isn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Those exchanges in the Security Council, they are made in public, in front of the cameras. And this was, after all, yesterday in New York during the UN Security Council session, the first time that all of these countries were sitting at the same table. Ukraine, the United States and Russia, all able to give statements and to have that testy exchange as you just described. Now, Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Minister, they know each other. They've met each other before, of course. They have had phone calls before. We know Sergei Lavrov, the Russian Foreign Minister, can be a little bit more aggressive, if you will, in public, but he can have very calm conversations with his counterparts on the phone and in person. And here's, of course, hoping that that will happen. This won't necessarily change his opinion on what Russia has a right to do and not to do on the border with Ukraine, and indeed on the Belarusian border with Ukraine as well. Just a reminder of what happened yesterday. Russia's ambassador to the United Nations accusing the West of whipping up tensions, and we heard also from the US ambassador to the United Nations, that's Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She said that this is the largest mobilization in Europe in decades. Of course, those Russian troops, over 100,000, that are now close to the border with Ukraine and on the border between Belarus and Ukraine. So that call is important between those two counterparts, but maybe more importantly, actually definitely more importantly, is whatever we might hear from Russian President Vladimir Putin. We haven't heard from him since the United States sent to the Russian Foreign Ministry its official written reaction to Russia's demands. Those demands, remember, being that Ukraine never be allowed within NATO and that NATO forces and weapons be taken away from Eastern Europe and from the border with Ukraine. There's a very good chance that we will hear from Vladimir Putin today. He, by the way, will be meeting the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Moscow today. Maybe thereafter there will be a chance for us to hear from him. Remember, Vladimir Putin, he is the one who is going to decide what is going to happen with those over 100,000 troops that are so close to Ukraine right now.
And that's very true. And we know now that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is flying into Kiev today for those high-level meetings. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, he'll be here in the next few hours, and we'll also have a press conference, by the way, between Boris Johnson and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. That's the person he's here to meet. It'll be interesting to see what we hear from those two later on today. Now, first things first, has to be mentioned, Boris Johnson is leaving behind a very, very difficult position he is in right now in London because of the scandal over the parties being held during the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown in the United Kingdom. He manages to escape for one day at least. But what he also manages to do is maybe be seen as one of the leaders in the diplomacy that is going on right now to keep a war from happening, or rather intensifying, because remember that there is an ongoing war here in Ukraine with Russian-backed separatists in the east since 2014. There has to be a diplomatic leader on the western side. Maybe that can be British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, more likely to be the French President Emmanuel Macron. But Johnson's presence here is important. Of course, the main goal here is to show his support, the United Kingdom's support for Ukraine, and also talk about sanctions that are likely to come from the United Kingdom if Russia makes any military moves into Ukraine. Those would be quite serious sanctions on Russian oligarchs, on their money held in London, sanctions that haven't been put in place before. Something similar might be coming from the US administration also in the near future. Again, I mentioned Emmanuel Macron of France. He is the one who had a phone call with Vladimir Putin yesterday, the second one in 4 days. Maybe instead of Boris Johnson's phone call with Vladimir Putin was supposed to be taking place yesterday, but was postponed by the United Kingdom because Johnson had to make his statement about the so-called Partygate scandal in the Commons. Now, we don't know when exactly that phone call is going to happen right now, but it will be interesting to see what both Boris Johnson and his host, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, will have to say here in Kiev in the next few hours.
Now, Philip, the message coming out of Ukraine is that we don't want war. What have people been saying to you there in Kiev?
Well, let me tell you very clearly, there is no thirst for war in Ukraine in the slightest. And when you talk to Ukrainians and inhabitants here in Kiev, they will remind you that Ukraine is at war already and has been at war since 2014, since the Maidan protests here in the square you can see behind me, since that led to a change of government and then led to Russia's annexation of Crimea and to the war between Ukraine and Russia-backed separatists in the east of the country. That is ongoing trench warfare right now. And in the east of Ukraine and that Donbass region, that's where there are very significant fears that Russia might be moving into a military incursion further into Ukrainian territory. It's a relatively calm city, I should tell you here. We're about a day's travel away from that Donbass region in the east, but we're a little bit closer to the border with Belarus, where there's a massive Russian troop presence as well. 4 military exercises with Belarus later this month, we believe, but that's just 170 kilometers away from here. So Ukrainians are looking that way. The inhabitants of Kiev, I should say, are looking that way because that is where the Russian president is closest to the Ukrainian capital. For the rest, though, this is a calm place, but there is a little bit of tension. The question always arising again and again, what exactly will Vladimir Putin do? When might his troops be moving in? Will they at all? And how long would such a military maneuver possibly happen? Those are all big, open questions that, to be honest, only one man can answer. Everybody knows that here. That's Russian President Vladimir Putin, from whom, again, we haven't heard for days.
All right then, Philip Crowther, many thanks for bringing us up to date regarding developments where you are. Thank you.